The day my parents handed my brother a $25,000 check, my mother looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "You don't need it, Sarah. You've always figured things out." She said it warmly. Proudly, even. Like she was paying me a compliment. Like being the daughter who never needed anything was a gift she had given me, something to be grateful for. I was 33 years old. I had been figuring things out since I was 17. I smiled and said, "I know, Mom." And something inside me went very, very quiet. Welcome to Hidden Blood Revenge. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm 36 now, an interior designer based out of a city I moved to alone with 2 suitcases and a laptop. And this is the story of how a $25,000 check that was never mine became the most expensive mistake my family ever made. But before we get to the check, I need to tell you about the table. Because none of this makes sense without the table. The family dynamic. Growing up, our dining table was a very specific kind of place. My brother Ryan sat at my father's right hand. Literally. Every single dinner, without discussion, without assignment, Ryan sat beside my father and I sat at the far end beside my grandmother, who was lovely but also mostly deaf, which meant I spent most of my childhood eating in a comfortable kind of silence while Ryan held court. Ryan was the idea. That's the only way I know how to say it. He was the family's idea of what a child should be, loud, charming, full of plans. He wanted to be an actor at 12, a musician at 15, a filmmaker at 17. Every new dream was received at that table like a royal announcement. My father would lean forward. My mother would clasp her hands. And the whole family would reorganize itself around Ryan's latest vision. I was the quiet one. I drew floor plans in my notebook margins during school. I rearranged my bedroom furniture every few months, chasing something I couldn't name yet. I got a part-time job at 16 at a local furniture store and spent my paychecks on design books. Nobody at the table talked about what I wanted to be because I never announced it like Ryan did. I just did it. Quietly. Steadily. The way I did everything. By the time I was 22, I had an interior design degree, a small portfolio, and zero financial help from my parents. Not because they couldn't help. They had helped Ryan twice already by then, once for a music recording session that produced 3 songs nobody heard, and once for a short film that never finished editing. They helped Ryan because Ryan asked. And I never asked because I had watched what asking looked like in our family. It looked like Ryan. And I was determined to be something different. What I didn't understand yet was that in my family, different meant invisible. The $25,000 check. Ryan was 30 when he decided he wanted to open a restaurant. Not a small cafe, not a food truck to test the concept. A full sit-down restaurant in the middle of the city's most expensive dining district. He had a name picked out, a logo designed, a mood board that looked like it came from a magazine. He had no restaurant experience, no culinary training, no business plan that anyone with actual business knowledge would have called a plan. What he had was confidence and our parents. I found out about the $25,000 the way I found out about most things in my family, by accident. I had stopped by my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon to drop off some groceries for my mother, who had been recovering from a minor knee procedure. I walked into the kitchen and my father was at the table with his checkbook open. Ryan was sitting across from him, leaning back in his chair, relaxed the way only people who have never been told no can be relaxed. My father looked up when I came in. He didn't close the checkbook. Sarah, perfect timing. We're just helping Ryan get his restaurant off the ground. Ryan grinned at me. Founding investor situation, he said, like he was doing our parents a favor. My mother came in from the hallway, moving carefully on her recovering knee, and she looked at my face and must have seen something there because she crossed the room and put her hand on my arm and said, "You don't need it, Sarah. You've always figured things out." I looked at the check. $25,000. My father's signature already on the bottom line. I said, asterisk, I know, Mom. Asterisk. I put the groceries on the counter. I hugged my mother carefully around her knee. I said goodbye to my father and to Ryan. And I drove home. That night I opened my laptop and I started writing a real business plan. The restaurant opened 8 months after that Sunday afternoon in my parents' kitchen. Ryan named it Ember and Oak. It had exposed brick walls, Edison bulb lighting, a menu printed on craft paper, and prices that assumed the neighborhood cared more about atmosphere than value. I know all of this because my mother sent me photos with the kind of excitement she usually reserved for Ryan's school plays and baseball games. She sent 17 photos. She did not send an invitation to the opening night. I found that out later, from my cousin Melissa, who had been there and assumed I had chosen not to come. I hadn't chosen anything. I simply hadn't been told. I didn't say anything about it to my parents. By then I had learned that pointing out the things they missed about me only made them defensive and made me feel worse. So I looked at the 17 photos, said, "It looks beautiful," in the family group chat, and went back to my laptop. Because by the time Ember and Oak opened, I had been working on my business plan for 8 months. Every night after my regular design job. Every weekend. I had done the math 40 different ways. I had talked to 2 accountants, 1 small business lawyer, and every designer I respected enough to ask for honest feedback. I had saved $31,000 of my own money over 4 years of careful, unglamorous discipline. And I had identified my first 3 potential clients: a hotel group looking to refresh 2 properties, a real estate developer who needed model units staged fast, and a restaurant owner, ironically, who wanted a complete interior overhaul. I did not tell my parents any of this. Not because I was hiding it. Because I already knew what would happen if I told them. My mother would say, "That's wonderful, honey," and then ask how Ryan's restaurant was doing. My father would nod and say, "Smart girl," and then tell Ryan's story to the next person who walked in. I had spent 33 years being the background of my own family story. I did not need their attention to begin. I just needed to begin. So I did. The collapse. Ember and Oak lasted 14 months. I know the exact number because Ryan called me, which he almost never did, on a Tuesday evening in what would have been month 15, and told me it was over. The landlord had given him 30 days. The staff had been let go. The suppliers were owed money. He said it the way Ryan said most hard things, quickly and with a kind of surface-level calm that I recognized as shock. I asked him if he was okay. He said he was fine. He asked me if I had any connections in the restaurant world who might want to buy the equipment. I gave him one name. We hung up. That night my mother called me crying. Not about Ryan exactly. About the money. About the $25,000 that was now gone, absorbed into unpaid invoices and a lease that had 3 months left on it when the doors closed. My father had apparently been very quiet all evening. My mother said she just didn't understand what had gone wrong. Ryan had seemed so sure. I listened. I said I was sorry. I did not say what I was thinking, which was that a man who had never been told no had walked into one of the most brutally difficult industries in the world with 0 experience and $25,000 of borrowed confidence, and the only surprising thing was that it had lasted 14 months. I said goodnight. I hung up. And then I called my first hotel client and confirmed the start date for our second property project together. The company grows. My company was called Mitchell Studio. I had registered it quietly 18 months earlier, worked the first year entirely alone, and by month 20 had brought on 2 junior designers and a part-time project manager. By year 2 we had a waiting list. By year 3 we had completed 41 projects across 3 states, been featured in 2 regional design publications, and turned over just under $1.2 million in revenue. I did not post about it on social media. I did not mention it in the family group chat. I did not bring it up at Christmas dinner, where my mother spent most of the meal talking about Ryan's new idea, which was a food truck this time, and my father nodded along and said *, Ryan just needs the right concept. *. I ate my dinner. I complimented my mother's roast. I drove home. Year 3 became year 4. 1.2 became 2.4. And then something happened that made hiding it impossible. A journalist called my mother. Not to ask about Ryan. To ask about me. The call. The journalist was writing a piece for a regional business magazine about women-owned design firms that had scaled past the 2 million mark without outside investment. She had found Mitchell's studio through one of our hotel clients. She had done her research. She knew my name, my company's revenue range, our client list, and apparently, through some combination of public records and social media digging, she had found my mother's phone number and called to ask if she would like to comment on her daughter's success. My mother called me 12 minutes after that journalist hung up. I was in a client meeting. I saw her name flash on my phone 3 times before I stepped out into the hallway. "Sarah," she said when I picked up. Her voice had a texture I hadn't heard before. Something between pride and something else I couldn't name yet. Asterisk, why didn't you tell us? Asterisk. I stood in that hallway for a moment, holding the phone, looking at the wall. "You never asked, Mom," I said. The silence on the other end lasted a long time. My mother called me 4 more times that week. The first call was the one in the hallway, the one where she asked why I hadn't told them and I said you never asked, and then we both held the silence for a long time before she said she would talk to my father and hung up. The second call was my father. He was warm in the careful way men are warm when they realize they have miscalculated something. He said he was proud of me. He said Mitchell Studio sounded like a serious operation. He said he always knew I had it in me. I thanked him. I did not point out that knowing I had it in me and betting $25,000 on Ryan instead were 2 things that could not both be true at the same time. The third call was my mother again asking if I was free that Sunday for dinner. The fourth call was Ryan. Ryan did not call to congratulate me. Ryan called to tell me about his food truck idea and to mention, casually, near the end of the call, that he had been talking to a small business lender and the terms were not great and he was wondering if I had ever considered diversifying into food and beverage concepts because he had some ideas that might be a good fit for someone with my kind of capital. I told him I wished him luck with the lender. I went to Sunday dinner. The table. My parents' dining table looked exactly the same as it always had. My father at the head. Ryan at his right hand. My mother moving between the kitchen and the table the way she always moved, filling things, adjusting things, making everything comfortable for everyone except herself. I sat at the far end. Beside the chair where my grandmother used to sit before she passed, 2 years ago, quietly, the way she had done everything. Dinner was polite. My father asked careful questions about Mitchell Studio. My mother refilled my water glass twice, which was new. Ryan talked about his food truck concept for 11 minutes and my father nodded along and said the right encouraging things and I watched it happen like I was watching a film I had already seen. After the dishes were cleared my father folded his hands on the table and looked at me with an expression I recognized as the one he used when he was about to say something he considered important. "Sarah," he said. Asterisk, "we want to talk to you about something." Asterisk. I waited. Asterisk, "Your mother and I have been thinking. Mitchell Studio is doing incredibly well. And we're so proud of you. Truly." Asterisk, he paused. Asterisk, "But we've also been thinking about the family. About making sure everyone is stable. Ryan has a real concept this time and with the right support." Asterisk. I picked up my water glass. I took a sip. I set it down carefully. "Dad," I said. Asterisk, "How much?" Asterisk. He blinked. Asterisk, "What?" Asterisk. Asterisk, "How much are you asking me to give Ryan?" Asterisk. The table went quiet. My mother looked at her hands. Ryan looked at the ceiling with the expression of a man who had rehearsed innocence. My father straightened. Asterisk, "We're not asking you to give anyone anything. We're talking about a family investment. A loan, really. Something you get back. Asterisk. Asterisk, like the $25,000. Asterisk, I said. Nobody answered. The envelope. I reached into my bag. I had brought something with me to that dinner. I had thought about it all week, whether to bring it, whether it was too much, whether I was being cruel. And every time I thought about my mother's voice saying, "You don't need it, Sarah, you've always figured things out," I decided it was not too much. I put an envelope on the table. My father looked at it. Asterisk, what is this? Asterisk. Open it, I said. He opened it. Inside was a single $2 bill. Crisp. Unfolded. I had gotten it from the bank specifically. That, I said, asterisk, is what this family invested in me. In 33 years. That is the total. I counted. Asterisk. The silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard at that table. I don't need your investment, I said. Asterisk, I never did. You told me that yourself. And you were right. I figured it out. Alone. With no check and no opening night and no 17 photos in the family group chat. Asterisk. My mother's eyes filled. Ryan opened his mouth. My father looked at the $2 bill like it had said something to him. I love this family, I said. Asterisk, but I will not fund it. Not Ryan's food truck. Not the next idea after that. Not anything that comes with the assumption that my success belongs to everyone who ignored my struggle. Asterisk. I pushed my chair back and stood up. The journalist's article comes out Thursday, I said. Asterisk, I asked her to mention that Mitchell's studio was built without any outside investment. I thought you should know before you read it. Asterisk. I picked up my bag. I looked at my father's hand still holding the $2 bill. I looked at my mother's face. I looked at Ryan, who for once had nothing to say. Thank you for dinner, Mom, I said. Asterisk, the roast was perfect. It always is. Asterisk. And I walked out of that house into the cool evening air and I sat in my car for a moment and I breathed. My phone lit up before I reached the end of the street. Then again. Then again. By the time I got home it was showing 23 missed calls. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat by my window. And I felt, for the first time in 36 years, completely and entirely free. The people who price you cheap are only ever telling you what they are worth. Not what you are. Mitchell Studios' fourth-year revenue closed at $3.1 million. Ryan's food truck is still in the planning stage. And I have not been back to that table. But I sent my mother flowers on her birthday. Because she made a perfect roast. And some things you hold on to. And some things you finally, quietly, let go. Asterisk, if this story reached you, if you have ever been the one they stopped worrying about, leave a comment. Tell me where you are watching from. And subscribe for the next one, asterisk. Asterisk, welcome to Hidden Blood Revenge. Where the quiet ones finally tell their side.